A millionaire tried to humiliate her maid at a party, but what happened next shocked everyone. Clara was one of the richest and most popular girls in the city. Her life was full of luxury and wealth. Everything about her was about showing off how rich she was. Her clothes, her house, and her extravagant lifestyle. She lived in a massive mansion with gardens, swimming pools, and beautiful views of the city. The sunlight always seemed to shine brightly on her home, making it feel like a castle in the middle of a busy city. Everything she owned was more expensive than what most people could ever dream of. Clara loved to surround herself with fancy things. She wore designer clothes, drove expensive cars, and made sure to always have the best of everything. Money and status were what mattered to her, and everything in her life was measured by how much it cost. At 25 years old, Clara was the perfect picture of wealth and beauty. She had cold blue eyes and looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. She was always perfectly put together, from the custom-tailored dresses she wore to the sparkling jewelry on her wrist. Even the wine she drank was expensive. Everything in her life had to show how rich she was. She liked to have control over everything and everyone, and she often used her wealth to make others feel small. One sunny afternoon, Clara stood in her bedroom, looking out the large window. She watched her maid, Juliana, who was outside working hard in the garden. Clara's cold eyes narrowed as she observed Juliana's every movement. Juliana was trimming the bushes and cleaning the yard, carefully tending to every part of the garden. Sweat dripped from her forehead, but she worked without stopping. It was a job that Clara found beneath her. Juliana was poor, hard-working, and always happy with what she had. It was something Clara couldn't understand. Juliana was beautiful in her own way, even though she didn't wear fancy clothes or jewelry. Her smile was genuine and kind, something that Clara could never relate to. She was in her 30s, and every drop of sweat on her face seemed to show the hard work she did day in and day out. Juliana was content with her simple life, but Clara couldn't help feeling envious. No matter how much money she had, she could never have what Juliana had. True happiness and beauty that came from within. Clara didn't like that, so she came up with a cruel idea. As she watched Juliana, an evil thought crossed her mind. A wicked smile appeared on her face as she imagined how funny it would be to humiliate Juliana. Why not bring this country girl to my birthday party? Clara thought to herself. It will be hilarious to see her embarrass herself in front of everyone. Clara's birthday party was the biggest event of the year. It was a celebration that only the richest kids from the city's elite would attend. People would wear their most expensive outfits, talk about the places they had been, the cars they drove, and the luxurious vacations they took. It was a show of wealth, and Clara was always the center of attention. She loved to brag about her accomplishments and her extravagant life. But this year, Clara thought, things would be different. This year, she had a secret plan to make herself stand out even more. She wanted to use Juliana to get attention. Clara's plan was simple. She would invite Juliana to her birthday party, make her look out of place, and watch as everyone laughed at her. Clara imagined Juliana's discomfort as she stood in the middle of the party, surrounded by expensive clothes and people who didn't understand what it was like to live without money. It would be the perfect way to show off her power and make everyone look at her, not Juliana. Feeling excited about her idea, Clara left her bedroom and walked toward the garden. The hot sun hit her face as she stepped outside, reminding her why she preferred the cool air conditioning inside. As she approached Juliana, the maid wiped her brow with a small handkerchief, looking up with a friendly smile. "Good afternoon, Miss Clara," Juliana said warmly. "Good afternoon, Juliana," Clara replied with a practiced, sweet tone that she used whenever she wanted something from someone. She smiled at Juliana, pretending to be kind. "I've been watching your work," Clara said, "and I have to say, I'm very impressed." Juliana's eyes lit up with pride. She didn't know what to say. In all the years she had worked for the Clara family, she had never received any praise, and she certainly never expected anything from Clara beyond her weekly paychecks. "Thank you, Miss Clara," Juliana said, smiling even more. I always try my best. That's why, Clara continued, I want to give you something special, a reward for all your hard work. Juliana blinked in surprise. She had never received anything special from Clara before, and she didn't know what to expect. A reward? Juliana asked, confused. Yes, Clara said, enjoying the moment. She wanted to make sure Juliana felt grateful for what she was about to offer. Every year, I have a big birthday party, she said with a fake smile. It's the most important event of the year. The richest kids in the city come to show off and have fun. This year, I want you to come with me. Juliana was speechless. Me? To your party? She stammered, looking nervous. I don't know anyone there, and I wouldn't know what to do. Clara smiled, hiding her real thoughts. Don't worry, Juliana, she said sweetly. You'll be my guest of honor. It will be an opportunity to see how the other half lives. Besides, everyone will be excited to meet you, the person who takes care of me and my home. Juliana looked down at her dirty hands and worn-out clothes. She didn't feel like she belonged at such an event. But I don't have anything to wear, she said quietly, unsure what to do. Don't worry about that, Clara said with a wave of her hand. I'll make sure you have the perfect outfit. You won't need to worry about a thing. Juliana hesitated. She didn't know if the sudden kindness was genuine, but the chance to attend such an event was tempting. It would be an honor, Miss Clara, she said, her voice full of excitement. Thank you for thinking of me. Of course, Clara replied, smiling coldly. She placed a hand on Juliana's shoulder, sealing the deal. I'll make sure you get everything you need for the party. It's this Saturday. As Clara walked back to the mansion, her mind began to race with ideas for her plan. She was already thinking of how she could make Juliana look foolish. She couldn't wait to see Juliana try to fit into a world she knew nothing about. Once inside, Clara poured herself a glass of wine and picked up her phone. She dialed Chloe, her personal assistant. Chloe, Clara said without greeting, I need you to do something for me. Find a dress for my maid, Juliana. It has to be the most inappropriate dress possible. Something that will make everyone stare, but for all the wrong reasons. And make sure it's way too big for her. Chloe sounded confused, but she agreed. Do you have any preferences, Miss Clara? Clara smiled to herself, enjoying the cruelty of her plan. Surprise me, Chloe. Just make sure everyone notices her for all the wrong reasons. Clara stood by the window, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in warm hues of orange and pink. But her mind was elsewhere, focused on the plan she had set in motion. The image in her head was clear. Juliana, walking into the grand ballroom of a high society party, dressed in a ridiculous, ill-fitting green dress. It was a dress that would make her stand out like a sore thumb. She could already see the looks of confusion from the guests, the stifled laughter behind champagne glasses, and the whispered comments. At the center of it all would be Clara, the mastermind behind this cruel joke. Clara loved the idea. The thought of everyone whispering about Juliana, laughing at her, made her feel powerful. Do you remember when Clara brought her maid to the party? They would say, and everyone would laugh. The laughter, the whispers, the stares. These were all pieces of a cruel comedy Clara had designed. It wasn't just about making Juliana the laughingstock of the night. For Clara, this was a statement. It was a reminder to everyone at the party of who she was. Not just a wealthy socialite, but someone who could manipulate situations, who could control others and make things happen, no matter how mean-spirited they were. As she stood there, Clara sipped her wine, her thoughts drifting back to her childhood. She was born into wealth. Her parents weren't just rich. They were ruthless. They had made their fortune by making harsh, sometimes immoral decisions, and Clara had learned from them. Every step her parents took on the way to the top was marked by ruthless choices that other people might have called cruel. Clara's father had once told her the story of his first big break at 26 years old. He had stolen the idea of a promising startup, presenting it as his own, and securing investors. The original founder, a bright but naive young man, had been unable to prove the theft, and his dream had been shattered. The man had ended up working at an electronics store. Then there was the story of the hostile takeover of a family-owned business. The business had been around for 3 generations, but Clara's father dismantled it, selling off all the assets and leaving the employees without jobs. The father of the family who had built the business from scratch had a heart attack when he found out about the sale and died shortly after. Clara had grown up hearing stories like these, each one reinforcing the idea that cruelty was necessary to succeed. The more ruthless you were, the more successful you would be. Now, Clara lived in the massive mansion her father had built with the money he had earned through such cutthroat decisions. She had more money than she could ever spend, but it had all started to feel hollow. The designer clothes, the luxurious trips, they all felt dull now. Everything was just stuff. Nothing excited her anymore. And the one thing she hated more than anything else was Juliana. Juliana was kind, hardworking, and beautiful. Clara couldn't stand how good Juliana was at everything she did. It made Clara feel inferior, and she hated it. That's when Clara came up with the idea. She would humiliate Juliana at the party. It would be a reminder to everyone that Clara could still cause a stir, still make a scene. It didn't matter that Juliana had never done anything wrong. Clara would make her the center of attention, just to prove that she could. The plan began to take shape, and Clara's friend Chloe, always quick and efficient, was tasked with finding the perfect dress for Juliana. It was a hideous green dress, 2 sizes too big, with an absurdly puffed-out skirt. It looked like something from a bad stage performance, completely out of place at a glamorous party for the rich and famous. When Chloe showed it to Clara, she could barely hold back her laughter. "Perfect," Clara said with a cruel smile. "This is exactly what I had in mind." Finally, the night of the party arrived. The hotel where it was being held was a beautiful, luxurious building perched on a cliff, overlooking the ocean. It was decorated with massive floral arrangements, and a red carpet stretched out in front of the entrance. Security guards in black suits stood like statues at the gates. The luxury cars glided past, each more impressive than the last. Clara's heart raced with excitement. This was her world, a world she had created. The people at this party were the kind of people who mattered to her. The elite, the successful, the ones who understood power and influence. The ones who would appreciate the spectacle she was about to create. Inside the Rolls-Royce, Clara adjusted the bow on her dress, her smile widening. Next to her, Juliana sat nervously, clearly uncomfortable in the oversized green dress. Juliana didn't know it yet, but tonight, she was going to be the joke of the party. Clara couldn't help but suppress a giggle as she looked at her guest. "Remember, Juliana," she said sweetly, "tonight you're my special guest. Don't worry if you don't understand everything that's going on. Just smile and nod." Juliana, her hands clenched tightly on her knees, nodded nervously. "Thank you again for this opportunity, Miss Clara. I promise I won't let you down." Clara had to fight the urge to laugh aloud. Juliana had no idea that the only way not to disappoint her was to become the laughingstock of the evening. The car pulled up to the entrance, and a valet opened the door. Clara stepped out first, greeting the photographers who immediately started snapping pictures. She posed with practiced elegance, her smile perfect for the cameras. Then, with a dramatic flourish, she extended her hand to Juliana to help her out of the car. The moment Juliana stepped out, Clara's plan was already unfolding. For a split second, the flashing cameras paused, as if the photographers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then, the flashes resumed, even more furiously than before. Juliana, blinded by the lights, stumbled slightly as she exited the car. Clara kept her hand on hers, not as a friendly gesture, but to ensure that Juliana looked even more out of place. "Miss Clara, who's your companion?" one of the reporters asked. Clara beamed, relishing the moment. "This is Juliana, my maid," she said with a cruel smile. "I thought it would be fun to bring someone who knows how to make things grow. Don't you agree?" The laughter that followed was forced, but it was enough. Juliana, Her face flushed with confusion. Tried to smile politely, but it was clear she had no idea what was going on. She didn't understand that she had just become the center of a joke. Clara could feel the eyes of everyone around her. The rich and powerful, the celebrities and business moguls, were all watching. They had already begun to whisper. The evening was unfolding exactly as Clara had planned. Once inside, the contrast between Juliana's world and the luxurious one around them became even more obvious. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a golden light over the guests, who were sipping champagne and talking in hushed voices. The wealthy women wore gowns that probably cost more than Juliana's entire house, and the young men compared expensive watches and cars. Juliana, in her mismatched green dress, stood out even more. Juliana looked around, clearly overwhelmed. "Miss Clara," she whispered, "I don't think I belong here." Clara smiled, hiding her satisfaction. "Nonsense, Juliana. You're my guest. Let me introduce you to some of my friends." With a hand on Juliana's back, Clara guided her toward a table where her parents sat, surrounded by powerful executives. Nearby, she spotted Samuel, the CEO of one of the most promising startups, and another well-known venture capitalist named Jasper. Clara greeted them warmly. "We thought you were going to miss all the fun," Samuel said, raising his glass in a friendly greeting. "Never," Clara replied smoothly, before turning to Juliana. "Let me introduce my companion for the evening. This is Juliana, my maid." There was a moment of silence as Samuel stared at Juliana. His voice, when he spoke, was full of disbelief. "Your maid." Clara nodded, savoring the moment. "Yes, I thought it would be refreshing to bring someone interesting, if you know what I mean." The laughter that followed was forced, but still enough to humiliate Juliana. Samuel then decided to join in on the joke. "Tell me, Juliana," he asked, "what do you think about colonizing Mars?" Juliana blinked, confused. "Well, I'm not sure, sir, but I suppose if they're going to colonize Mars, they'll need good maids, right?" she said, trying to play along. The room burst into laughter, this time more genuine but just as cruel. Clara couldn't hide her satisfaction. This was exactly what she had envisioned. As the evening continued, Clara paraded Juliana around the room, introducing her to more guests. With each introduction, Juliana's discomfort grew. Clara made sure everyone saw how out of place Juliana was, how little she knew about the things the rich people around her talked about. She didn't understand technology, business, or the kind of jokes they made. Every time Juliana stumbled or said something awkward, Clara felt a thrill of power. It was working perfectly. By the end of the night, Clara knew Juliana would be remembered not as a kind, hard-working person, but as the joke of the party. And Clara? She would be the one who had caused all the chaos, the one who had shown everyone just how powerful she really was. Juliana was at the big party, trying her best to smile, but her smile didn't feel real. It was the kind of smile that didn't show happiness. She was nervous, and everyone around her could tell. She was there with Clara, who seemed to be having a great time. But Juliana felt out of place. The man who had asked her a question, Esteban, looked at her with curiosity. "What do you think the future of robots and housework will be?" he asked, smiling. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and Juliana felt a little awkward. Sweating and feeling uncomfortable, Juliana thought for a moment. Then she answered, "Well, sir, if they can cook rice and serve it without spilling, that would be something." Everyone around her laughed. It wasn't the kind of laughter that made Juliana feel good. It was the kind of laughter that made her feel embarrassed. She didn't understand why they were laughing. It wasn't meant to be a joke, but it seemed like the others found it funny. Esteban smiled, clearly amused, but then he said, "That's not a bad idea. Maybe we should look into making robots cook and serve on Mars." This made everyone laugh even more. Juliana felt like her face was getting redder. Clara, who had been standing beside her, watched the situation unfold. She didn't feel bad for Juliana at all. In fact, Clara seemed to enjoy watching Juliana get more and more uncomfortable. The laughter continued, and Juliana was starting to feel like she didn't belong at the party. As the night went on, things didn't get better. The guests continued to make fun of Juliana. Their comments were getting bolder, and their laughter grew louder. Clara, meanwhile, seemed to be having a fantastic time. She loved being the center of attention, and she loved how her friends seemed to admire her. At one point, Juliana decided to leave the crowd and go to the restroom. She needed a break. Clara watched her go, noticing how Juliana's shoulders were slumped and how her steps looked uncertain. Juliana was clearly upset, but Clara didn't feel guilty. She was too busy enjoying herself. For a moment, though, Clara did think maybe she had gone too far. She wondered if it was too much to watch Juliana suffer. But before she could think about it for long, her friends came over, eager to chat. She quickly forgot about Juliana's feelings. Meanwhile, in the hotel's luxurious restroom, Juliana stared at herself in the mirror. The lights above her highlighted her tears. Her dress didn't fit well, and she felt so out of place. It was the first time that evening she had a moment alone. No one was staring at her, and no one was laughing at her. She could finally breathe for a second. As she looked at her reflection, Juliana felt a wave of sadness. She didn't belong in this fancy world of wealth and power. She was just a maid. She didn't know how to talk to people like Clara or the others at the party. Every glance and every little laugh made her feel smaller. She could leave right now, catch a taxi, and go home to her little house. It would be easy, but something stopped her. She had promised Clara she would stay, and Juliana was the kind of person who kept her promises. With a deep sigh, Juliana splashed cold water on her face. She felt better for a moment. She stood up tall and adjusted the bow tie on her dress. It didn't fit perfectly, but she was going to try to make it work. She wasn't going to run away. She was going to finish the night, even if it was hard. Back in the ballroom, Clara was in her element. She was surrounded by important people. She loved being the center of attention, and she was always the one leading the conversations. She knew exactly what to say and how to act to make everyone like her. It made her feel powerful. She was talking to Paul, a man who was one of the most successful people in the tech world. He was very important, but Clara didn't like him. He was smart and liked by everyone, which made him a rival to her family. Clara smiled at Paul, but her smile wasn't friendly. It was more like a fake smile, the kind she used when she was trying to hide her true feelings. "I enjoy surprising people," she said, trying to sound casual. Paul looked at her carefully, sensing something wasn't right. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Is that really what you're doing? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're humiliating someone who doesn't even know why she's here." Clara's smile faltered for a moment. She didn't expect Paul to call her out like that. She quickly tried to change the subject, but then something happened that caught everyone's attention. All the people in the room turned to look at the door. A tall, older man walked in. He had shiny, silver hair, and he wore a perfectly tailored suit. There was something about him that made everyone stop and notice. He wasn't flashy or loud, but he radiated power. It was Theo, one of the richest and most famous investors in the world. Everyone in the country knew who he was. "Paul, my boy," Theo said, his voice friendly but also commanding. "It's good to see you again. How's that clean energy project of yours going?" Paul seemed thrilled to talk to Theo. He eagerly started explaining the latest developments in his project, but Clara was no longer listening. She was too busy looking at Theo. He was a legend, and she felt a little nervous standing next to him. Just then, Theo turned his gaze toward Clara and smiled. "And you must be Clara," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." Clara shook his hand, trying to hide her nerves. "Mr. Theo, it's an honor," she said, hoping she sounded confident. Theo's smile was warm, but his eyes made Clara feel like he was studying her. "I've heard many things about you. You're certainly a remarkable figure," he said. "Although, I must say, your guest tonight is quite interesting." At that moment, Juliana returned to the room. She had just come from the restroom, and her face looked different. She stood taller now, and there was something strong about her. Theo noticed her right away. "Juliana," he said, smiling widely. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Everyone in the room was surprised. No one had expected Juliana to get this kind of attention. Theo's smile was genuine, and his tone was filled with respect. Juliana looked around the room, feeling a little nervous, but then she smiled back at Theo. She walked over to him and shook his hand. "The honor is mine, Mr. Theo," she said, her voice stronger than before. As Juliana and Theo talked, something incredible started happening. One by one, people around the room stood up and began to clap. Slowly, the applause grew louder and louder until everyone was on their feet, clapping and cheering for Juliana. Clara stood there, stunned. She couldn't believe what was happening. "What's going on?" she whispered to herself. People in the crowd were whispering to each other. "That's her, the unknown angel," someone shouted. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She had heard rumors about the unknown angel, a mysterious person who had donated millions of dollars to help people. But she had never imagined that Juliana, her maid, could be the unknown angel. Juliana turned to the crowd and smiled. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and proud. "I am the unknown angel." The room went completely silent. Everyone was shocked, and Clara's face went pale. She couldn't understand. Juliana, the maid? But the unknown angel was a legend. How could this be? "I'm a maid," Juliana said, smiling proudly. "And I'm proud of it." Then Theo stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, holding a microphone. Juliana was once one of the top young entrepreneurs in our country, but for reasons she kept private, she decided to leave that life behind and live simply. Theo turned to Juliana with admiration. "I've had the honor of working with Juliana on many charitable projects. Her kindness and generosity are inspiring." The room erupted into applause again. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She had been so wrong about Juliana. The whole night had been a lesson she would never forget. Clara's world was spinning. Her plan to play a cruel joke had fallen apart. And now she was the one everyone was laughing at. People were starting to gather around Juliana, excited to meet the famous unknown angel. Important people, like business leaders, stars, and philanthropists who had ignored Juliana just a few hours ago, were now trying to talk to her. A famous actress, Ms. Eliza, said, "Your donation saved the art center in my hometown." "I can't thank you enough," a well-known tech entrepreneur added. "The money you gave for clean energy research is changing everything. It's an honor to meet you." As more people complimented and thanked Juliana, Clara felt small and wanted to hide. She couldn't understand what was happening. How could she have been so wrong? How could she not have known who Juliana really was? Juliana, on the other hand, accepted the praise kindly, saying, "The real honor is in helping. We all have the power to make a difference, no matter what we do." At one point, Juliana walked over to Clara, who had backed away into a corner. Clara couldn't meet Juliana's eyes. Juliana gently said, "I know you're wondering why I agreed to come tonight, knowing your plans. Clara, why work as a maid if you have so much money? Why stay in this situation?" Clara couldn't answer. She felt bad, not knowing what to say. Juliana smiled softly and said, "Because honest work, no matter what it is, has dignity. Helping you and taking care of your home reminds me of what really matters. Sometimes, the best lessons come from the most unexpected places." Clara felt something inside her crack. Her whole life, she had been taught by her parents that money and power were the most important things. Now, here was Juliana, a woman with more money than Clara could ever dream of, choosing to live a simple life and help others quietly. "I'm sorry," Clara said quietly, her words hard to say. "I didn't mean to. Juliana put a hand on Clara's shoulder, understanding. "I know, Clara, and while I can't approve of what you did tonight, I think there's a lesson here for all of us," Juliana said. She turned to the crowd around them. Tonight reminds us not to judge people by their jobs or how they look. True wealth isn't about money. It's about the good we do in others' lives. The people around them agreed with murmurs. Clara felt the looks of the people who had once admired her turn cold or full of pity. She realized how far she had fallen. Theo, a man with a strong presence, stepped closer to Clara. His voice was a mix of disappointment and hope. You made a big mistake tonight, but as Juliana said, there's always room to grow and change. Clara nodded, feeling smaller than ever. Theo continued, We can't change the past, but we can start fresh. You don't have to do it alone. There are people here who will help you and your family work on things that really matter. Clara felt a strange hope, something she had never felt before. I want that. I want to learn, to help, to do things differently, she said. Juliana smiled brightly. Great. How about we start tomorrow morning at your house? Just like I suggested. There's something peaceful about cleaning and seeing your hard work pay off. I would love that, Clara said. I think I have a lot to learn from you and from everyone. Later, Juliana went to the balcony where she could see everyone. She said with a soft smile, I hope I'm not interrupting. No, not at all, Paul said, making space for her. Clara, still feeling ashamed, could hardly look at Juliana. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Juliana put her hand on Clara's shoulder again. Sometimes there's no need to say anything. What matters now is what we do from here. The group stood silently, looking at the starry sky as the party ended. People left with new ideas. The story of Juliana, the millionaire maid who had quietly helped others, spread quickly. It made people think about what really matters in life and what true success looks like. The next day, Clara sat down with her parents, and they talked for a long time. Her parents were sorry for teaching her the wrong values. They promised to change and help others instead of just focusing on themselves. The next morning, Clara showed up, ready to clean the house with Juliana. She understood now that they weren't just cleaning the house. They were changing their lives for the better. Clara knew this was just the beginning of a new path for her and her family. The story of Clara and her maid would become a legend, reminding people that true wealth isn't about how much money you have, but about how much good you can do for others. If this story made you think or gave you a new perspective, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss our future videos. Let's keep sharing thought-provoking stories and learning from life's lessons together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.